Three, two, one, audio check.
Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to the City of Colchester and to the Town Hall. Good to see you all. I must go through the housekeeping and then we'll proceed. We've got a busy and scintillating evening planned. There are no practice evacuations for this evening. If an alarm does sound, then we need to make our way downstairs in an orderly fashion via the main or the side staircase and rendezvous in the car park behind the Town Hall. The meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and will be there for a long time, no doubt. Discreet use of mobile phones is okay, but let's try not have any sounds on. We will break at 7:30. We will aim to conclude the evening's meeting by 9 p.m, as is the agenda. I'm Darius Laws. I'm the chairman here tonight. I do identify as a chairman, and I'm also a councillor for Rural North Ward. Can I ask for people sat at the table to introduce themselves, please, starting on my extreme left? Thank you.
My name's Martin Warnes, representing Beerchurch, and I'm substituting for Claire this evening.
Vanessa Moffat from Mile End Ward.
Paul Smith, St Anne's and St John's Ward.
Councillor Kayleigh Rippingale, Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Thomas Rowe, also from Rural North Ward.
Dennis Willets, Lexton and Braeswick Ward.
Lucy Predman, Strategic Director.
Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer.
Mel Rundle, Head of Greening, Street Care and Safety and Bereavement Services.
Thanks, folks. Okay, Deputy Chairman is still with us. Okay, we will move on then to item 3, urgent items. I just acknowledge that the work programme has had some tweaks and changes in consultation with spokespeoples from all the groups, and it's difficult scrutiny because there's a lot of things to scrutinise, and we want to do things justice. So with having additional meetings to ensure that happens 2 in 1 week in November, we know how to have fun. Declarations of interest, item 4. Can I see some hands? I do. Okay, do you guys want to go? Starting on my left, please.
Thank you. Yes, I have a other registrable interest in that I'm chair of Colchester Commercial Holdings, and therefore I need to declare an interest on items 11 and 12, as these are seen to directly relate to the financial interest of Colchester Commercial Holdings, and as such I will declare an interest and leave the meeting during those 2 items.
Similar to Councillor Warnes, I'm on the board of CCHL.
I'm on the board of Colchester Borough Homes, and that is just notable interest, I believe, on this case.
I think that's right. Okay. They are all recorded. Thank you for that, and we'll try and manage that.
I'm also on the board of Colchester Borough Homes.
Thank you, and we'll try and manage it so that Councillor Warnes, when you do leave the second substantive item tonight, that you return back for the third to say a few words in a different capacity, and then leave again for that one. We'll try and make that happen, Mr. Clark, so that Councillor Warnes may well be down in the members' room during that item. I'll do my best to keep on top of proceedings. Okay, item 5, minutes. The panel are asked to approve a set of minutes from the 10th of September 2025. They are good with me. Can I see support for that? It looks unanimous. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Excellent set of minutes. Item 6, general have your say. Obviously, if members of the public wish to have their say now, they can, or they can wait until a specific item, but I believe we do have a pre-registered member of the public, and I've got Mr. Richard Bond. If you'd like to speak now, you can, or you can wait until later. It's entirely up to you. Because we'll be moving on to looking at the scrutiny of a portfolio holder shortly, so you can wait until the item that's relevant to you if you want to. Yeah, okay. It might be a long evening for you because we've moved that item to the latter part of the evening, so it's entirely in your gift. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, that's what we're here to help. So thank you. When you hit the red button, the floor is yours, and we may well have a response for you. But it may be that a lot of what you raise is discussed in the latter part of this evening, which you can catch up in YouTube in your leisure, or if you swiftly get home, you can watch it live. It's entirely up to you. Okay. Over to you.
Right. Hello, my name is Richard Bond. I'm the co-chair of Unison Essex and also a Unison steward for ID Verdi. This February, I've worked 40 years on what I still refer to as the Parks Department, and my fellow steward here, Stephen Sadler, has done 44 years. So it's safe to say we've witnessed some changes over the years, and sadly, due to central cuts in government, they've not always been the best and have impacted on the services we see today. We're all proud of our city and as staff, as staff, but in the last decade, the staffing levels have dropped from 60 to about 38 now, who battle to keep our city presentable. I think we all share the desire to have a city looking its best to encourage visitors. However, if you're one of those visitors coming on the park and ride, the first thing you'd see is weedy, overgrown roundabouts, followed by 3-foot weeds in the central reservations and bare planters. So not really the impression we want to give, really. But and you know, whatever Cabinet decides going forward, I would urge that this minimal service level, what we've seen over the last few years, getting less and less, is really not the way forward. So yeah. You might have seen just a small bunch of us outside. We come here tonight not to protest, but just to remind people that there's a human element to the verdicts you're going to come up with. You know, we are a low paid staff, and you know, this really matters to us. We were here 2 or 3 years ago, if you remember, in 2023, I believe, that to talk about equal pay with the council, sort of pay parity. And although we got lots of kind words and encouragement that night, 2 weeks later we had a £200,000 budget cut and redundancies. So it really does have a human impact on a very low paid staff. You know, put my unison hat on, we welcome that the City Council is going to bring the service back in-house, sort of at arm's length. You know, we encourage that. It's always the union's point of view to bring services back in-house, and we look forward to hearing more about Amphora, who Unison have a good working relationship with. The only slight concern is that as a council, you haven't run a grounds maintenance contract for 28 years. So there'll be a lot of to and fro, and I'm sure. And one of the most important factors we feel is leasing the machinery and getting the proper machinery to do the job. It's such a vital part of what we do, and really like to extend to the procurement people to come down and visit the yard ID Verdi and see the machinery we use, talk to the operators and get a feeling, because if you get the wrong machinery in and you get a quick growing year, then you're going to be in real trouble, sort of thing. But yeah, I'm sure in the next year we'll be talking. So, but I do make that a genuine offer to come down and have a look at the yard. You know, we'll find out more from Councillor Goss and everybody else. I'll cut it short because it's terrible being up here. Like I say, if you could just maybe give some feedback on what Amphora is, because we're still at a bit of a loss. We understand it's like the commercial arm of the council, owned by the council, but up to this point we don't really know much else about them, sort of thing. And what I'd like to do is, if I can formally request that the council and Unison start dialogue from maybe November, once whatever the final verdict and the way forward, then we can start working on a smooth transition, hopefully best for the city. So, okay, that's me done. Thanks, all right, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for what you and your colleagues do to try and make and keep making Colchester look beautiful. We do have some absolute jewels, you know. The Castle Park is magic, and that memory goes back a long way. So I've made a note of the salient points you've raised, and I really think the council must appreciate the kind offer you've made in terms of seeking to work towards a transition that works for everyone. That sounds very, very sensible. And on your machinery point, I'm going to be very interested in following this on a personal level, because I inherited a steel petrol hedge trimmer, and it's brilliant, although it's not so good in the early hours of the morning or late at night because it's so noisy. And so I've been thinking about, in the future, when I have a capital expenditure review, whether or not I move over to a green set of kit, because that might be quieter. But then I've got concerns about where lithium comes from. So I'm also looking at it with that hat on. But you can come back to me. You will hear some answers to some of what you've raised tonight, for sure. and you're sat metres away from the leader of the council who's heard your kind words, your case, and the passion that you bring is fantastic. But you may respond.
I was going to say we've just started to start using more electric and battery powered machinery, so it is sort of moved in that way, but I'm sure we can move a lot quicker, sort of thing. But yeah, thank you for hearing me. There's a lot more in the speech if you got the email, but we'll go over the main points we want to bring out. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Scrutiny is here to listen. Ultimately, decisions typically get made in cabinet, but we are here to be a friendly critic of those decisions, and that's what we're here for. So your input's really valued.
And like I say, as a trade union, we are more than happy to give any input and feedback, whatever. So I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Chair, as we have, do you mind if I jump in, Chair? Just as we have the leader of the council here, and I think what we're hearing from Mr Bond is that they would like some reassurance on what Amphora is and how that transition will be managed. I mean, Leader, I'd be very surprised if that process isn't in place already, because I understand that, you know, as a responsible employer, all employers should look to make sure that the staff and the people that are impacted by these decisions are heard and understood. Is there anything that you can say at this point to just sort of reassure them around that, or is that, I don't want to put you on the spot, I'm just saying from a...
Yeah, okay,
sorry,
okay.
Like,
all right, we have the leader here, we have interested people here, so yes,
is there something
if
really
the leader would like to give an insight...
really nice to the guys.
Yeah. Sorry. The leader is not mandated to come to scrutiny. The leader does put an awful amount of time in this building, which is a great thing. So I'm grateful that you're here, leader. But if you want to give some reassurance, just very, very top line about what this is about, that might be helpful at this stage.
Thank you, and I'm always happy to be here and to hear, friendly or otherwise, critique is useful, is it not? So that's how we work. So I was going to follow you down the corridor in the most friendly of ways, no menace at all. But the points you made, I hear, and our officers, including Mel over there, do as well. What you've described is absolutely the process that has to happen. So has to be conversation with those who represent the workforce and with the workforce. There has to be a transition. If we do this well, which I believe we will, knowing Amphora as I do, yes, it's the commercial arm of the City Council, but its ethos is public service. So it's not like a raw, let's squeeze a penny out approach to life. This is about a way of enabling effective delivery of public services. Events are a classic illustration. I know they have their challenges for the park, but they're being much applauded for what they bring in. There's one illustration, the care line, helpline, that kind of thing as well, and CCTV. So there's much that they do beyond your scope. Absolutely, I will make sure that you have the contact connection. I'd welcome making sure personally that you're comfortable that it's a fair and due process. I'm sure it will be. We have legal obligations if we take on board staff. They will apply to Amphora as our commercial arm as well. But I'll just leave you those words, you know, public service ethos will drive them. A lot of talented and capable people in the board that oversees them, which is councillor-led. So I hope that's some assurance.
Thanks everyone for that. Okay. Item 7, decisions taken under special urgency provisions. I see none. Item 8, cabinet or portfolio holder decisions called in to review. Again, I see none. Item 9, items requested by members of the panel and other members. Do I see a hand. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. This was something which we raised at the briefing. There's recently been a change in our IT security arrangements. This has caused an awful lot of disruption amongst IT users, particularly the councillors, and impacted our abilities to contact residents, operate as we have done. And whilst I understand the reasons for why we may need additional security given the cyber attacks, I do feel that the implementation of this policy seems to have been done particularly poorly, and there seems to be a complete lack of consultation with councillors to explain to us what's happening and why and how it can be assisted. I mean, to give you one example, I lost my diary system from off my mobile phone for the past week. It's now back on due to some help from the IT support services, so they've done a good job in recovering that one. It was an issue which should have been identified first and remedial action taken before it became a problem, rather than me having a week of residents ringing me up and I'm saying, oh, hold on a minute, 3 o'clock on Wednesday, I think I can do that, but I'll give you a call when I get back home. So I would like to look at that one. I understand this is a problem that a large number of councillors have had across all the political groups.
Okay, before I seek a top-line response from a relevant portfolio holder who may or may not be in the room, is there any other member who wishes to pass a comment on this item that's been suggested? Do I see a movement in favour of looking at this item? I do. Okay, right. Well, on a personal level, I seldom use very little of the council's IT other than email through a council-issued laptop. But I do remember the heady days where you used to have your council emails forwarded to your personal account, which no longer happens. And I am becoming a bit of a dinosaur with tech, so I'm not an expert to comment. I'm not going to, but I see that there might be someone in the room that might be able to offer a top-line insight into the legitimate concerns that Councillor Smith has brought up on behalf of members. And it's important to state really on the record that being a councillor for many of us is part of our lives. It is not our lives. We have, in many instances, other paid interests in addition to what we do here. And so what might work for a traditional employee day to day, where they can just nip down and see IT, is quite something different if you're stuck in, half an hour, 45 minutes of traffic over an 8-ash green trying to get in because you no longer could access your diary. So I really empathise, and I think members are right to share an insight. And it's important that IT, whatever they learn and however they respond, they understand that we are a bit different from a full-time pensioned employee of the council. There, I've said it, but Councillor Pearson, I think you're going to give us an insight into how we might be able to move this forward and satisfy the concerns that's been raised.
Thank you, Chair. And I understand and I accept the concerns and the criticisms that have been made. Certainly, a number of councillors did experience some issues with the decision that was taken, perhaps a little hastily, but I think with the right intent. We have a new interim IT head, and when he looked at our cybersecurity system, he felt that they needed tightening up. Let's just put it that way. Darren Kidson, who is our IT lead, has offered to come along and speak to Scrutiny at a future meeting, should you wish him to. I know that he's also putting together a briefing exercise for all members. Difficulty is, of course, that we've got so many items in the diary for council briefings, so trying to squeeze it in has not been that easy. It's been agreed that there should be a working group that's cross-party that would include yourself, or as we discussed earlier, someone who you wish to delegate that responsibility to on your behalf. The chair of the Governance and Audit Committee as well, because whatever is discussed and decided by that group should come through G&A, because it would impact on the IT policy. Myself and Richard Block, one of the senior officers of the council, will be a party to that group, as well as Darren Kidson and also our security expert in the IT department. And I know that Ben has done a sterling job of assisting most councillors over the last 2 to 3 weeks in overcoming the difficulties that they've had, and I'd just like to record publicly my thanks to the work that he has done. What I would suggest is if anyone has continuing ongoing issues, take them up with Ben in the first instance, who I know is solving them post haste, but if he can't, or if there are any difficulties getting hold of the IT help desk, then please let me know and I will chase up as well.
Okay. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Yes, I would certainly look forward to the proposal. I think it is a very sensible way forward, and I would also pay tribute to the work of the staff in the IT department in sorting out the various issues. I do accept that councillors are an extremely diverse from I don't think I even rate the dinosaur status on IT technology these days, but there are some people who have got very advanced systems as well, and it's a very wide and diverse system. It's a little annoying that it's happened this way, and that those who use their own equipment have been particularly badly affected, because I came from the early days of IT where councillors were encouraged to use their own equipment as a cost saving for the council. I understand these days that's probably not the way things are being done, but it's something that we do need to look at. So, and I'm also very pleased that I'm nowhere near that technical panel, because that would be a complete disaster. So, thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you. If I could just come back on Councillor Smith's comment there. The guidance from our IT lead is that all councillors or most councillors should be using council provided equipment, because that means that it's got the software on it. It's easy for the IT desk to control, to ensure that it meets the security standards, but also to assist with maintaining and repairing or guiding as is necessary. I used to use my own equipment until I became a member of the cabinet, and I must admit it's been a lot easier transitioning to this system. I've had no issues because I'm using council equipment.
Okay, I think we've got a way forward in this one, and I look forward to officers discussing diary arrangements on this one. Thank you, Councillor Pearson, for your attention. Right. We are going to move on to looking at the portfolio holder, I believe, of Culture, Heritage and Environment, Councillor Scorless. And while Councillor Scorless is taking his chair, I warmly welcome him here. I personally had his portfolio a while back, and I'm delighted to see that he is persevering with a project that I kicked off to unveil a 2,000-year-old Roman mosaic in Red Lion Yard, and I'm sure we're all very excited that the ribbon will be available to cut, no doubt, by someone next year. Joining Councillor Scorless, we have our expert officers and all things Visit Colchester. Welcome, guys. Do you want to just introduce yourselves live and direct so folks at home know who is at the table?
So, Councillor Lee Scorless, Cabinet Member for Culture, Heritage and the Environment.
Good evening. Frank Hargrave, Head of Museums, Culture and Tourism.
Claire Taylor, Visitor and Cultural Services Manager.
Thanks, guys. And I know, Councillor Scorless, you've submitted a report, which is very useful. And we do say in here that we don't like death by PowerPoint, and we like to ask lots of questions. So I may well jump in, but the floor is yours. What have you been up to, and what's going forward?
First of all, I know you hate PowerPoints. Richard, did you get our PowerPoint? It's not the end of the world. We can do it without if you don't want PowerPoint, Chair, or I can send it quickly to Richard now. I'm happy to do without, but.
What do members want Councillor Scorless to crack on, or would you like to see a PowerPoint? Should we see a PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Go on then. Right. We've got division here. Do we need a vote, or should we?
You can if you like.
Let's give our officers a couple of moments to see if a PowerPoint can be done, because I think if it's been prepared, yeah, we'll do that.
The officers have. No. It's just sent to you, Richard.
Also, for folks at home who might want to see it live on the big screen.
Exactly. Anyway, while Richard sorts that out, Chairman, I obviously we go from modern technology to the Iron Age. Yeah, it is a blessing to have this really important portfolio because, like yourself, I'm absolutely passionate about the history that we have in Colchester, you know, Britain's first city, the former Roman capital of Britain. And what I've wanted to do throughout that time is look at how we make Colchester a destination where people spend 3 days here. So, you know, 2 nights, stay over and enjoy our city. Economy, and hopefully go back home and tell people how wonderful Colchester is, and that brings more people here. So that is what I want to do as portfolio holder. We had a really good event set up by Amphora earlier this year. That was just before we had the big bands, and all the stakeholders of Colchester were invited, and it was looking at do they go, oh, like Colchester, I'm just going to get the train, have a few drinks and go home? Or do they actually go, wow, never been here before, what's there to do? So one idea that I passed on to Amphora is looking at actually when you buy tickets for next year, you'll get an email closer to the event saying, why not visit Colchester? Link to the hotels and what's going on. And we're looking at, you know, could businesses offer like a 10% discount? That helps them bring more footfall. So if you want to go to the second slide, Richard. There we go. Brilliant. So, one before that, Richard, sorry. You got too fast. Anyway, on this slide, once it turns, most of you will hopefully know how important tourism is for the local economy. So we believe it's worth more than 424 million to Colchester as a whole, and that helps support over 7,000 jobs. So it's absolutely vital for a city like Colchester. And we're not just a city centre. We are the whole of Colchester. So we are from, as it says here, Colne Valley to Tiptree to Mersey Island. People come to places for different reasons. Some people come for the beach, some people come for a nice country walk or to use the see the nice river in Dedham, as you know, while others do want to come for the castle, for the zoo. Next slide, Richard. Oh, yeah, you're on there. Cool. So just before that, Richard, sorry. So for those who haven't visited what we have on offer, we have our excellent visitor centre at Hollytrees, and our staff there are really dedicated to what they do, and they also run our social media, as well as helping people and guiding people to the things that we have on offer for Colchester and trying to offer them deals as well. So hopefully they do spend more money as well. And one thing that was really impressive that Claire's been working on is spreading the name of Colchester across the county and the east of England, where we've worked out a deal with Greater Anglia to put up posters of Colchester with our David Beckham looking Roman soldier. So we've changed the branding a bit, but apparently that's what works with the focus groups. And that is going out in stations across the east of England. What we do want to do is try and get that further across the field of east of England, because Greater Anglia only seems to be sticking it to lines that are direct to Colchester plus Southend. It'd be great if we could get that on the Cambridge line, so you could get Broxbourne, Harlow, all those places on that line who could discover Colchester as well and build our audience. Obviously, London's the big coup, because people will be coming in from all places to work, as well as living in London and working out what is this all about when it comes to Colchester. So we're doing really well on that. The social media only has a small budget, but I think if you've seen their posts, they're really inventive, they're exciting. They are posting them in neighbouring community groups like Ipswich and so forth to try and get people here. So that work is ongoing. Next slide, Richard. And obviously it's not just our culture, it's not just our history that we have in Colchester, and the history is rich. You know, it's not just the Romans, we have got quite a rich Civil War history and throughout, and military history as well. But we have our culture as well. and lots of people do come to Colchester for the culture. The Mercury does extremely well when you see the reach that the Mercury gets. The Arts Centre puts on various variety of shows that brings in people from the east of England, and First Sight is an award-winning museum that made BBC Essex and BBC News a few years ago. So people do come for First Sight, whether that is your taste or not. Next slide, Richard. And just after this one, our lovely museums. Thank you. So some of the work we've been doing to save the council money that's been brilliantly done by Frank is this isn't coming out of our big capital budgets. A lot of our funding is coming from grants that Frank is diligently working away to get. So we're going to have some urgent repairs on the castle roof. That is unfortunately going to mean a lot of Harris fencing around the castle, but the front of the castle will be kept clear. But hopefully once that's done, it's done and it can be clear after probably over a year, isn't it, Frank, possibly with the works. We have the Natural History Museum, which at the moment has a big white funnel over it, but at the moment it's open and footfall's doing well. Lots of parents are very happy because lots of young children do love that. It will have to close temporarily again to do the proper repairs. I am told that when we were bidding for the money, that we got lucky, a bit of the roof fell off when they were there. So that made them realise you do really need this money. And obviously some works on Holly Trees as well, which is a very old building. There's parts of it that the public can't access because it's that old. Right, so next slide, Richard. So we've had almost 73,000 visitors to the castle over the last 12 months, and we're increasing the income quite significantly on that. So that's really positive after COVID. One thing that Frank is doing really well is looking at VAT exemptions. That's another way of looking to save money and keep our assets open as well as more funding coming in. Next slide, Richard. And then we've got a really good selection of exhibitions that we've had this year so far. So a big one that's helped in Holly Trees is the Margaret Cavendish event, where we've had some people from the north of England come all the way to Colchester for that. And it has inspired more people to go in there. Unfortunately, has ended now, but was an interesting one to have. And we've got the Mythical Creatures one on now. So if you've got children or grandchildren, that's one that's really worth going to. And we've got some other events around that are being pushed as well, that are for more adult audience. And I think recently we had it was a kind of role-playing game night at the castle as well. So that brings in income in different ways, which is all helpful because this is one of the few areas where we are going to make income. And next slide, Richard. So, we've had lots of success with Heritage Open Days. I know that lots of people like their freebie of the castle on that day, but they also told me it's so busy that hopefully they will go back and pay the money because they thought it was a bit like a creche on that day, a lot of excited children going in for free. We have the Roman Circus where they've been doing some really good work and we're supporting them. And Amphora have been really helpful. The Roman Circus are going to have access to 5G, which will help with their presentations that they do there and one of their videos that they show. So that is really positive moving forward for them. And obviously interpretation boards across the city as well as you go around. One thing I skipped over as well is if you do go into Holly Trees, we do guided tours still for people. So you may have been on one on yourself, you may be interested, or you may have residents who say, we don't know enough about history. Well, actually, go on to one of our guided tours, which is really, really informative. And in the mix of this, what we're against is it's really difficult to promote any town or city, I think, in England, because you're against low-cost airlines. If you're really into Roman history, you can get a cheap flight to Rome and see literally the real thing. And other Italian cities and probably Greek cities as well. Or you can just go anywhere that has nicer weather than Britain, being frank. So it is difficult. Some flights are cheaper than trains, but clearly I think we're pushing above our weight. Could we do better? Could we do more? Of course we could. There's a lot more we could do, but we don't have unlimited money. And what we do know is this isn't a statutory service. We could one day just go, we don't need it. But I'm not in that. I don't believe that is the direction we want to go as a council. I don't believe that's the direction any businesses in Colchester want to go, because they would lose a lot of footfall in that. And I think we would lose our identity by going down that route and just become another town, city in Essex. So we are, I think, punching above our weight still against some big barriers. But whenever you go through Colchester, I've seen lots of foreign students using the castle, going on field trips. We're doing a lot of work with bus tours that elderly people use and offering them discounts to use the castle because they're only here for half a day. So we offer them a discount. That's money that wouldn't be spent otherwise. So there's a lot of work going on to push Colchester. And again, hopefully those people going there feed it back that we are a lovely city. We're a great place to come to. We are one of the destinations in the east of England. And I'm happy to take questions.
Great stuff. Well, thank you for that, and thanks for the presentation. I've got three, but I'm not going to be greedy, so I'll look at members first. Councillor Warnes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for a very good presentation, and thank you for all the work that the staff do. And in the times I've been to the Castle Museum, it's a very well presented and well worth paying in order to go and have a look. And in your presentation, you talked to us about the importance of tourism to the economy, but could you talk to us about the importance of culture for the local economy?
Of course. And thank you for the question, Councillor Warnes. Culture is absolutely vital for Colchester, along with the heritage. I only saw the other day that someone put on Facebook they want to move to Colchester. Where should they move? And they said it's because of the fantastic arts and culture in the city. So lots of people have their own thing. I know you love your Roman history, as do I, Councillor Laws, but some people love the arts, the culture, the theatre. And when I talk to Essex County Council, they say on the slide, Colchester is the capital of culture in Essex. We are the place where people want to come. And only end of this month, early next month, we have the Colchester Fringe, organised completely by talented volunteers that we have in Colchester. So it's absolutely vital for footfall. We know that money we're giving to Colchester organisations, every pound we put in gives £4 to the local economy, which is absolutely vital, whether it's people coming from outside Colchester to the Mercury to watch a production, to the Arts Centre for the Beer Festival, or for First Sight for a new exhibition, or for the Headgate for an amateur production. We're bringing people in who are going to, again, spend their money in the restaurants before or after a production, and possibly look around our shops, use our park, maybe even go, I'll come back and come to the castle. So it's absolutely vital, and we are so lucky for the talent we have in Colchester and that we're a hub for it. And some of you may have not heard of Creative Colchester as well, which is a group of creatives in Colchester who are all doing voluntary stuff around trying to push the brand and give young people opportunities. Because it does give jobs, it gives future careers, and it gives aspiration for a lot of people in Colchester. So it's absolutely vital.
Okay, members. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Yes. I'd like to concentrate on what you're actually doing as a portfolio holder, without taking away from the excellent work that we've seen elsewhere. So, if you were here in 12 months' time, what will you be telling us are your successes that you will have achieved due to initiatives that you've taken?
That is a very good question. Well, one that I mentioned at full council is that I want to look at starting the fundraising for a statue of Boudica, because a lot of people don't connect Colchester and Boudica. So that would be something that I'd want to do. Obviously want to start connecting up with the events next year, that people get emails to invite them to Colchester and that free night stay, and working with the hotels to work out if we are getting more people coming to Colchester and spending their money. We have a few exciting opportunities next year which are going to bring a lot of income, and one of the areas we need to bring income to is holly trees, because we now started charging for holly trees. I can't say too much about an exhibition we're planning there, but we're hoping it's going to be a real success. It's going to bring people into Colchester and looking at the use of that building. And one thing is we want to look at Holly Trees of actually what does it want to be? Because I think we've been a bit careless in the fact that it's always been free, so you can kind of just let it be what it is. But when you go in there, it's a collection of everything. You have the clocks, you had old toys. I think the closest toys were in the 80s, and I was kind of making the point, well, actually, we should probably have a Game Boy in there now for people my generation, because they're walking their kids around there. But actually, should it be that, or could it be something else? Could it be a social history museum? Could it just be for exhibitions? Could we use it for other initiatives? Halloween, could you do some sort of events around Halloween there? So with Holly Trees, I want to try and get that up and running and more going there in the next 12 months. So hopefully we'll be able to announce what the exhibition is soon. Once it's all, the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And that's one of the big ones, because we've obviously had concerns around that building, and we want to make sure that that is sustainable for the future.
Thank you. The other part that I've noticed from the schedule of delegation is on the environment side, which we haven't really touched much on there. Could you say a little bit about what you're doing there, and particularly with reference to the net zero, please?
Yes, so my part mainly, so it's an odd one, so it's kind of split. So some of it is Councillor Luxford-Vaughan's portfolio, but I've got the net zero work, and working with a team there, we're looking at where the future is with that, because of how much we can do now. So we've done a lot in the past since we passed the motion on climate emergency. It's now looking at actually what is feasible with the buildings we've got. Obviously, one of the toughest buildings to make carbon neutral is the town hall itself, with many restrictions, but also funding restrictions. What the team is doing is some really good work, interesting work with university, where we're looking at a kind of our own heat pump network for that area, possibly the New Garden community and parts of Greenstead. That's still being investigated, how it's viable and who would run it, because we haven't had someone run some sort of heat network like you have in some London boroughs, probably for a good 50 years, maybe never in Colchester, as far as I'm aware. So that is something that's coming forward. We also have sustainable transport. A lot of that does fall under Councillor Luxford-Vaughan's portfolio, but what we're looking at is around the bike hub that is doing really well. In fact, people have their regular little spot that they love to use every day, and they've kind of made their own locker and everything, and doing so well that if all goes well, we're looking at purchasing more of the buildings down there, which will bring us an income from rent, and will also allow us to have 24/7 access to the bike hub. We have a lot of people who work shift work in Colchester, work nights. That will allow them to not rely, if they don't drive, on taxis or mum and dad. They will be able to cycle in, park their bike there, it will be safe, and go home to work safely. So that's some of the stuff that's going on, but a lot of, unfortunately, with environment, a lot of it would come under county council. We are restricted. Another work that is happening with the team as well, I should say, and I've emailed Councillor Cunningham about this, who's head of highways. We're looking at trying to actually get a proper bus stop for the zoo. So the zoo doesn't have a bus stop, which seemed bizarre and kind of blew my mind, but then I drive, so maybe I'm part of the problem. But we're looking at actually, can we get a bus stop there? And the other side, we're having a battle with highways, who at the moment will not put a pedestrian crossing in, and also won't lower the speed of a road that they know is an accident hotspot, which just seems bizarre. So I'm currently in dialogue with Councillor Cunningham at trying to get some movement there as well before the county council folds, or at least there's some sort of action there for the new unitary to deal with.
I just want to develop the net zero point there, just while we're here, and then I'll move on to other members, because ultimately, Councillor Scores, you are an elected politician, so it would be useful to understand your take on this. I mean, I can't remember the exact wording, but we did in this panel make a recommendation to Cabinet to consider whether or not they wish to go back to full council, because when that initial vote was made in the chamber for to acknowledge a climate emergency, several years ago. There's been a serious churn of councillors since then, and the discourse has changed a little bit. And there are some people that are making a very case for a more pragmatic approach and perhaps less concerned around fixating on a date, for example. And also, there are very practical concerns around bankrupting organisations in the pursuit of green agendas, which in some instances have been found to be not so green, because we don't know for certainty where all of the lithium comes from that powers all of this stuff. And for my money, there's nothing green about putting solar panels on our agricultural fields where we're in Ireland and we should be growing food there. That's just my personal view. That's not Scrutiny's. That's my personal one. But would you give us a flavour of where you're at? Are you pragmatic, or are you a net zero green fanatic at all costs?
A pragmatic, Chair. I've met with the team, and obviously they mentioned it was either this meeting or it was environment panel. I can't remember which, but they were essentially being challenged on the targets that we set back in, I think, 2018 now. And what was agreed was they were very ambitious targets, and ambition is a good thing. But being realistic, we're probably not going to reach those targets, and we're suggesting that we may move them down to the national targets, which are much more feasible moving forward. So I think it's like a 20% difference. So we'll be looking at changing that on the net zero angle. So yeah, we're open to flexibility, and we're aware, obviously, financially there's going to be restraints as well, and the team is doing what they can to get funding, because some of that team is funded by lottery money and other funding streams. But it's what, feasibly we can do. A lot of this stuff costs a significant amount of money that we probably didn't predict back then. And times have changed, the economy and getting products and so forth, as we saw with St Nicholas Square, that was delayed for a long time trying to get the materials.
Okay, thank you for indulging me on that one. I saw Councillor Rowe. I also saw Councillor Ripping-Gale. Let's have Councillor Ripping-Gale.
So hotel space has always been a discussion in the city. Do you think this limits the tourism potential, and what work is being done to encourage hotel providers to set up in the city?
Very good question. And yes, it will do, especially on the big events, whether that's a big Col United game or it's one of our big bands coming to Colchester, or a really good production at the Mercury or Arts Centre. It will limit it, because we only have limited spaces. And I'd personally rather see fewer Airbnbs, because those homes are needed for families. So yes, what we are seeing, there is obviously an application in at the moment for the old post office. So we'll see what happens there. There's clear demand, because people are putting in applications. So all we can do as a council is offer that support, and I guess work with our team and try and push that. But clearly there is that demand if they're already applying. And obviously when we had a controversial, let's say, application on the old bus station, there was plans for a hotel there as well. So there's clearly that demand coming through. It's just making sure it's followed through, and we can get there. But absolutely, we do need more hotels. And it's excellent that the George and the St Nicholas Hotel all both heavily invested in their hotels. That shows that clearly they're serious and they know there's income to be made here.
Great. Okay, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few points to raise, if it's okay. First of all, I'd just like to say I don't understand how we can declare climate emergency and then say we're being pragmatic because it costs too much. Either it's an emergency or it's not an emergency. So I really can't sort of fathom how that works. So I'm assuming that you think it's not an emergency, or you do think it's an emergency?
Well, I can put the ball at you, and what service would you like to cut to fix all these issues that need doing? Because we're talking significant monies that need to be done here. And yes, it is an emergency, but it's not the type of emergency where a building's falling down, for example. But the council can only do so much, and we must do our bit, and we are doing our bit, but we have to be realistic as well. And our team is trying to get funding from government. That may change with the current government to help older buildings and local councils. We'll have to see. But we have to be realistic about what we can do.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I don't think it's an emergency, so I wouldn't cut anything. So personally, I think that you probably agree with that as well, because if you did think it was an emergency, you'd be looking at things you could cut in order to deal with the emergency. Anyway, we'll move on from there. the Dedham River, I noticed that you picked up on that earlier. I think the good people of Dedham would probably have a word with me if I didn't mention this. I think you probably noticed, I think a number of people probably noticed, Chair and I were down there. There were a number of antisocial behaviour issues that were raised at the time. I know it's particularly difficult because it's not Colchester's completely in Colchester's control, but I spoke to Councillor Goss, for example, because there was issues with litter. One side of the bridge is Colchester, the other side is Baber. I've spoken to the councillors at Baber as well. Is there anything that we can do there to help sort of work with the parish council, to work with Baber, to understand how we can manage that, and you know, the local police, etc., how we can manage that antisocial behaviour there a bit better? And I understand that there's an issue with the land and everything. Just want to make sure that it's on your radar and understand what you and your team can do. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, it sounds like there needs to be a lot of partnership working here. And as you say, between the two councils, the parish council, involve the local councillors. I'm happy to attend as a cabinet member. I'm sure we can twist Councillor Goss's arm as well and see if there can be practical solutions, and the police, as you say. So I think maybe it's worth doing that in the spring, maybe, before it kicks off in the summer.
I will take you up on that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely fine.
I'm sure the parish council will be appreciative of that offer as well. We'll sort something out and we'll bring as many people as we can together.
And just a random question, because Rohage do this and Wivenhoe, do the parish council pay for a litter picker? Not to say that's the answer, but I don't know if that's something they do as well.
Off the top of my head, I think they do, yes, but it's not just the litter pick as well. It's all sort of, there's issues with regards into the water and the quality of the water, the concerns. There was a young girl that was struck down with a particular illness at the time, and there's just lots of different issues around sort of, you know, the safety, the livestock that are there.
Livestock
so anyway,
have been put down because of ingested plastic, which
exactly.
is an issue of the environment.
There's definitely something we should take offline. I really appreciate the offer, and we'll work something out. So I think that's good. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure the people of Dedham will be happy with that. You mentioned some, well, I picked up at the beginning, you mentioned the 3 days in Colchester. I think that's very sensible, sounds like an achievable goal. Apologies if I've missed it in the pack, but I didn't see any metrics around how we measure that. I mean, I think you pointed out that you're going to talk to some of the hotels to see if there's an uptick. Is there something that we can do with those, with the surrounding businesses to understand, you know, how many additional weekend bookings are we getting? Anything along those lines that we can talk about to sort of measure what we're doing versus whether it's a success or not?
Yes, and that's something we probably need to slightly improve on, because we use a model that doesn't always show that, but the businesses are really helpful. So after the Soapbox Derby, the Culver Square updated us how big their footfall was on a Sunday, which is impressive. So we can get those figures, and we do talk to them, and obviously Invasion is one that we help fund as well, and that's a huge weekend for everyone. So yes, we'll look at that in the future, and maybe that's something for me to come back in 12 months and can say, here's what we're doing and here's how we can find out. It is difficult because in the Natural History Museum we don't sign people in or make them charge. It's completely free, and staff may be busy at the gift shop and so forth. But there are ways. But I think Claire's made a good point in the report, and Frank, is that because we are such a diverse area, it's hard to tell if people are just coming to the day for Colne Valley for a lovely walk, or to Tiptree Jam Factory, or just to Tiptree generally, to a nice cafe, spending their money there, or just to Mersey Island. That is difficult, but we can probably narrow down the town city centre area.
One more, Chair, if that's okay. Oh, sorry.
Just to say that we've started doing a visitor survey where we're obviously doing face-to-face interviews with people that will have a city centre bias because it's taking place in the visitor centre itself. Too early, really, we don't have enough responses yet, but when we've got a statistically significant amount of those to provide a report. Not saying it'll give you all the information you're after, but there will be some really interesting insights. We've had some early reporting. Obviously, we're asking all the questions about where people are coming from, whether they're staying, those kind of things, as well as qualitative things, and also open responses. So we're getting an idea of what people think And as a wider thing, we'll be comparing that with the work that's been done with residents, because there's some quite interesting parallels in what our visitors think compared to what our residents may think about the place that they live. So we'll, when we've got that, say, up to a point where it's statistically viable, we can bring that to scrutiny if you would like to see it, and share it with members generally.
Yeah, I think that would probably be quite useful. And I do, just on a side point to that, I do seem to remember that we used to have an app which sort of took us around Colchester at some point. And I know there was some drive at some point to get people to use the app, because I think it pointed out areas of significance and things like that. I don't know if those type of things can be, you know, worked upon and sort of used to you know, sort of drive surveys, collect extra data. I think Councillor Scudis was talking about giving out discounts from particular businesses and things like that. If those things can be, you know, I'm just thinking if you can collect the data through people's phones, it's, you know, I think we all know that that seems to work a bit more efficiently than if we're doing paper surveys. So just, I understand that there'll be a cost to it and everything else, but just something maybe to explore as to what we could do down the line. And I've got one last question for Councillor Scott, if it's okay, Chair. On the lines of sort of what Councillor Smith was asking earlier, but a little bit more sort of hypothetical. In the instance that I think you pointed out, you know, we don't have an unlimited budget, for example, but there are plenty of things that you would like to do. In sort of given a time frame of sort of 5 years, say that you had the portfolio for 5 years, not saying you had an unlimited budget, but you had a large amount of money. What was the one thing, the top thing that you really think would be important for Colchester to do and to achieve in order to sort of improve tourism culture in Colchester?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I think I said it at full council. I'd love us to be, you know, up there with Cambridge as a destination in the east of England, and definitely challenging Norwich in the next few years. I'm not an Ipswich fan, so there's no bias there. I think something that if you had the unlimited money or extra money to do it would be really fun is looking at Roman reenactments of how Boudicca burnt down the city, essentially. Not the most fun, you know, friendly topic, but an important topic, because I think that does resonate with people. It's a strong historical woman figure, which at that time there aren't many out because lots were written out of history. I think that could be a really powerful one, because lots of children learn about Boudicca and they all know that she killed herself with an asp and so forth, but they don't connect it to Colchester. And I think that could be a really fun thing to do with people, you know, on the Roman walls dressed as Romans and so forth. And you have chariots going down the high street and so forth. And I mean, one thing that Council Laws has mooted in the past, if we could do it, you know, compulsory purchase the land where the Roman circus is, and you could build a Roman circus and have some horse races there. But unfortunately, there's a few houses that are in the way. But yes, and Abbeyfield, the people who walk their dogs might be a bit upset. But yeah, I think something around that. And what we had a few years ago, we had an excellent reenactment of the Civil War, where we had actual cannons, and they were blooming loud, I can tell you that. And lots of dogs barking when they went off. Which was really fun, and that is a kind of missed opportunity sometimes, because there is a lot of people who do love the Civil War, which isn't really taught in schools anymore. It's different topics that are taught. So there's some ideas that would be fantastic, but as you say, money, finding the volunteers. I'm sure Councillor Laws addresses a Roman, but we need a Boudica.
Excellent.
Let's not limit the ambition. You can have better looking Romans than me. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just wanted to bring it back to net zero, actually. It's a really difficult metric. I work in the world of data centres, and it's very difficult to promise that we'll reach net zero when we're installing and building gigawatts more data centres. And so it's also really difficult to measure when you've got scope 3 emissions in everything that you actually use in building blocks to build anything. So just measuring and promising net zero is one of the really difficult things to do, which is possibly why many initiatives for 2030 are failing and not going to reach their objectives. But is there something that we can do that isn't promising net zero by 2030, but is kind of leading nationally? Like in Cardiff, they have a net zero dashboard, which just shows emissions reductions, for example. So then maybe there's something we can do with the good data that we've got.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, and I'm open to any ideas members want to give me of what we can do. We are leading quite well on our e-cargo bike scheme that's doing really well, and the bike hires, so people are changing their habits slightly, but that's only going to make a minimal impact. It's great that we're doing it, but we all know that there's too many cars driving around Colchester short distances still. And there's a lot more work, I think, when we get a unitary and we have a mayor, is around the buses and how we can get a better bus service to, again, get people out of their car and so forth. Electric buses as well, because London's had them for years and we get the second-hand ones from 2010. So I think there's more that can be done on a strategic level at that once we get a mayor in place.
Yeah, it's about showing off the improvements all the time. So the air quality things, all those stats are going down. It's about showing that off and making it more of a destination.
I should say we were pilots for, some of you will remember, a long time ago at Scrutiny, we had the turning off your engine scheme on Brook Street and East Bay, and we got funding for that to put permanent signage up for that as well. So that's one thing we've done. And we were one of the pilot schemes in the country for that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be a bit greedy here, but then I'll come to Councillor Willett. So first of all, I appreciate your proactive cultural emails. They're very useful, and if you present them in a fashion that enables councillors to disseminate that through our networks, that's always useful. If you could give me some save the dates for next August, I can ensure that I don't miss key bands like the Smashing Pumpkins on a family holiday. So save the date would be good for me. Three areas really I'd just like your insights on, and I'm not putting you under the cosh if you don't know or don't have a view, that's fine, but simply next year I note that there's the 250th anniversary of the creation of the United States of America, but more important than that, it's the 250th birthday of John Constable. So I wondered if you've got any thoughts and plans, or if you want to tease us with what you're thinking on that, because for my mind, as Councillor Rowe alluded to earlier, we have this thing where, you know, there are border communities and, you know, sort of maybe perhaps we live in silos sometimes too much and we don't think about, well, how can we talk to the folks in Stratford because they're in Suffolk and all the rest of it. So any thoughts on John Constable making the most of that tourism opportunity next year would be great. Secondly, and related, and it's great to hear you acknowledge that that there is an opportunity for more people to come and spend a weekend in and around Colchester, and I note, without naming them, that there is a pubco in East Anglia that's had a rapid ascension in the last 13 years, and they've acquired, I think now they're on 22 pubs, 3 of which are 7 miles north of here. So you can probably work out what group I'm talking about. But I've read the detail behind that business plan and the investors, and they are interested in well-run country quality rustic traditional pubs that have rooms, because precisely to your point about Airbnb, they see the opportunity in people coming here for that. So I wonder if in light of all the doom and gloom we hear about pubs, if there is thoughts on how we can engage with micro pub chains, that perhaps there's an opportunity to put some of our fantastic literature in, because we love seeing Colchester literature when we get out and about, and it might be easy now that there are some good pub chains out there looking to grow. And thirdly, as we focus on local government reform and the demise of the City of Colchester Council potentially, I just wonder, as we have limited opportunities to celebrate potentially altogether, would you be interested in exploring the idea of opening up the Oyster Feast? Because, you know, it's a civic function at the moment, but from my mind, can't we shut the High Street down for a weekend and do what they do in Kent a bit more and really go for it? I know that Amphora would probably have to look at it from an event and a business plan point of view, but it'd be quite nice to consider, and I think, you know, you could claim that goal if you want, and we'll be all there with you, and Andrew Ellis, although I won't be perhaps eating too many oysters, but maybe more local gin. They are 3 areas.
Thank you, Chair. So, Constable, I don't think we've actually got that on our programme, unless I'm wrong. But I got a list today and don't remember seeing it on there. But
I should say, with my Ipswich hat on, we're doing quite a lot in Ipswich at the moment, but we've got celebrating Constable 250 there. But you have made me think, Councillor Law, and we'll have a discussion about how we extend that to Colchester as well, because there's a natural synergy, you're quite right.
And probably also with our friends in Sudbury, with Gainsborough, you know, the people come to see that. They'll be equally interested in coming to the castle here and then going off into Ipswich. Okay.
We'll take that back, definitely. That's really important. The second one was on pubs, wasn't it? And using them Airbnb.
Pubcos. I just wonder
Yeah.
if we're alive to some of these emerging trends where people are looking to buy pubs with rooms because they know people want to come here. And I just think that we talk about digital and Facebook a lot, but there's still a case for a traditional market that perhaps accidentally bump into a leaflet or a flyer. I just wondered if you were alive to that.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful information. Is that something wrong, Claire? Because I'm just thinking we can get information in them.
Yeah, completely. So distribution networks tend to be very traditional and expensive, and some of the companies that were doing that very intensive going round to individual accommodation providers, that world has ended, really. It's not economically viable for them. So and I am aware that we've obviously been talking about net zero, but actually members of the team at the visitor centre do hit the road with a packed car of leaflets and literally go, mainly in our patch currently, but we absolutely appreciate that visitors do not recognise local authority boundaries. And that's really important for us. And we do, if you look at our at the Visit Colchester social media, you'll see that we creep across the border quite a lot without trying to offend our colleagues who are in other districts. But absolutely, if there's some that you would particularly like to recommend, we're very happy. But of course, in the past, we've had some that in the villages that you're probably alluding to, just over the border, Nayland and others, and we're very happy to deliver those where we can.
Brilliant, thank you, Claire.
And the Oyster Festival.
Oyster Festival. So you think it is in the Oyster Feast, which is later this
Yeah, I remember the very first time I learned about the Oyster Feast, I turned up at the town hall at 6 p.m. and it was closed. I was like, what? I've just come from work. I thought it was a big party, you know. And I'm not taking anything away from the tradition of it. I just think maybe there's an opportunity to broaden it up for wider Colchester. And if it makes some profit for Amphora to reinvest back into Colchester's heritage and high street, voila, go own it if you want it.
Let me take it back. So a lot of it may come under the mayor's office. So luckily the mayor is my ward colleague, so I can message him after and find out. I mean, I'd personally close the high street tomorrow if we could and get the buses diverted. But I have also heard that at the Oyster Feast, some councillors and aldermen think a bit too much and might be coming out in the public, throwing up in the streets. We might need to avoid that. I've heard in the past, anyway. At least the cars would stop them doing that. So, it's something to explore. I think it's a fun event, and I think there's questions of actually. Lots of people are going to pay the £120 or however much it is. Could there... Oh dear, yeah, I can't afford that. So could we possibly have an event that's a bit more inclusive for people after, that's a bit more fun? I think would be an option. So let me talk to the mayor. And Simon's here from Amphora.
I appreciate your open-mindedness on
that one. No, it's all good. The more we can do in Colchester, because what always annoys me is when you see on social media, there's nothing in Colchester, it's dead, blah, blah, blah. And the amount that goes on is crazy. And the day when you had Invasion, you had the Rice and Spice, that was absolutely packed, as well as the town centre. There's always something going on in Colchester. Unless you're coming at Tuesday morning at 10 a.m, as I say, there's a lot of people about, it's vibrant. We're lucky that we have a sixth form centre, well, several sixth form centres who come in the town during the day and spend their money as well. So we are really lucky in that aspect.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Willis.
Very quickly.
Is it related to what I've just said?
Okay. Related to that. Just on that point, I think it's important to note that we have a lot of local produce as well. So, you know, stuff that complements the oysters. We have a lot of vineyards around Colchester as well, and I think it would be good if we can bring all those local businesses in and give them a place in the high street, for example, which would create additional footfall. And, you know, Colchester oysters are known worldwide. If we do local sparkling wine that happens to go with it, and I know that Devon Vale did their own sparkling wine, which I think they called Oyster, Mersey Oyster, at one point. I think it was 22, I think it was, they did that. So I think it would be useful to get those on board as well. So just consider that too. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And don't forget as well, we have our farmers market in Colchester as well, so I don't know if that's an option for them as well, which is very successful unless it's windy like it was last weekend.
Okay, we're coming to conclusions, I think, but Councillor Willits, do you wish to ask any questions?
Well, yes, Chairman, we've heard a lot about tourism and how we're trying to attract tourism, but we don't seem to have any firm milestones, targets which we're going to achieve. And I'm sure in the background there will be some, but I'd like to sort of tease out what is going to happen. With a lot of talk about Constable Country. Now, I'm taking a gamble here because I'm speaking on statistics which were issued 5 years ago. I haven't refreshed my memory since, but I seem to remember the broad term was that Colchester was getting just under 5 million tourists a year, of which 4.5 million hardly put their foot in the borough as it was, because they go to Constable Country. Of the 500,000 which are really centred on Colchester, 200,000 in broad terms go to the zoo, 100,000 go to the castle. That depends on the pricing regime in any given year. So it would appear that as we go towards Constable's anniversary next year, there is a huge swathe of people who are coming to our doorstep, perhaps putting 1 foot over the barrier of the border between us, so that it can be said they have actually been into Colchester City, but not for long, and they may only have had a cup of tea, then gone back out to see the other wondrous works of Constable Country. So what is the target to try and convert the 4.5 million people who go to Constable Country to come into Colchester? It's not far to come, but we seem to have no master plan, no really hard, creative approach to get to those people who are on our doorstep and bring them to see the wider range of facilities that are in Colchester. So is it doable? Are you prepared to actually produce a graph of how many you're going to bring over next year and the following year? Because it would seem that there's a huge potential there, which you, as portfolio holder, and your team can go out, put your arms around and bring them into Colchester. So, what is the master plan? What are the targets going to be? Or is this a targetless area?
So that is a very good point. We don't have any defined targets at the moment, but happy for either Scrutiny to recommend or we look at that and come back with that. Obviously, I want the numbers to be increasing year on year, which they are. We can definitely do some work around Constable Country, and not just Constable Country, don't forget Mersey, Tiptree and these other places that people only go for certain things. So we have our Visit Colchester team who can interact with those people. If there's any buildings that we can use to store our maps and so forth, and guides to Colchester as well, that would be really helpful. We also had the bid ambassadors, although they're more based in the city centre, but we could possibly talk to the bid as well about using them. So there are those options open, and I'm happy to look at that for, well, I'm guessing it's summer next year, isn't it, for when Constable Country really hits the peak, as well as Mersey Island. So definitely happy to take that away and for our team to look at what we can do on that and do some analysis of what worked and what did not and how we can improve it. And happy to take any input from the local councillors in those areas as well about what we could do, where we should target and who you think is worth speaking to get those extra people driving a bit further into Colchester.
Okay, members, I see no more indications. I'm just going to thank the portfolio holder and the leaders just left the room, and I was just about to say that, as far as I'm concerned, it appears that the portfolio holder knows the gig and he's got a good scorecard, and the leader, as primus inter pares, should consider keeping him, but the leader has left. So there we go. But I would also just congratulate the work of the officers who I know work very hard behind the scenes, in particular on the capital bids. because if it wasn't for them doing that, then we wouldn't be in the place we're in with Natural History Museum, Holy Trinity, and I'm really excited to go and have a little visit to the museum in Ipswich when it's finally completed. I need to go to see Norwich Castle now that you can go on the roof and have some fun there, which might trigger some further ideas on what might happen in the long run in Colchester. You never know. You never know. But thank you, Councillor Scordis. It's been a really interesting evening. It's clear that you're passionate and that you go the extra mile on this one. And I thank you for coming along. That is all. Great.
Thank you, panel.
Okay.
Cut off.
Okay, folks, so we are coming up to 7:30. I'm just thinking it probably is prudent to have a break now before we move on to the next two major items, and then we'll then also look at the work programme as well at the very end of the evening before we go home at 9 o'clock-ish. All right, so let's have a break now. Shall I call it for about 13 minutes? Does that seem fair for a toilet and a coffee? About 13 minutes, so 12, oh, he wants 12, okay, 7:32. Back around 7:32, please. Thank you. Okay, folks, shall we come to order and shall we begin with the process? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you very much for your patience. We are all now caffeinated and refreshed, and subject to, we're going to change things again. We're going to have the work programme item now because we need to do that, and we need to also invite a couple of members to depart for a couple of items. So work programme, let's do that now. Thank you in advance, Mr. Clark, for passing around what has been a very, very complicated set of arrangements to cover everything that we would like to cover. But do you want to take the floor?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as members will have seen, we've produced an updated work programme as a supplementary agenda document because following various changes that happened after the publication of the agenda for this evening's meeting, the main item that we had to move was that the panel was due to be considering the draft budget, revenue budget for 2026 to 27 at its meeting on the 11th of November 2025. With contacts from our finance team, that's now had to be moved back to the 9th of December 2025 to ensure that their reporting is all done on time. That will then go to Cabinet, which has now been moved to the 10th of December. But as was stated at the Chair's briefing on Thursday, this will be the initial stages of the draft budget production. So it'll come back to Cabinet in the new calendar year. And before that, should Scrutiny Panel wish to, there's the 27th of January Scrutiny Panel meeting, which if the panel is minded to want to have another look at the draft budget, they can do so then. So what we've done is we've accommodated the draft budget item on the 9th of December agenda, along with the portfolio holder reports from Councillor Corey as portfolio holder for resources, as those two marry up well. And we've shifted up to the 11th of November the portfolio holder briefing from the leader of the council, along with the requested briefing on progress regarding local government reorganisation, which the panel asked for. We've also got the extra item there for Middle Mill Weir, which was due to be on the 13th of November, which has now been put forward to the 11th of November, in order to accommodate the Heart of Grinstead item, which is being brought to the panel on the 13th of November. Now, the copy of the updated work programme that all members have seen have all of the changes highlighted in red, so hopefully those are clear, but I'm happy to take any questions about what we've put down.
Do I see consensus that that is all acceptable? That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Agreed. Let's move forward. So, we're going to dart about the place, but we're going to do strategic plan, delivery plan, refresh. I understand a couple of members wish to depart for the substantive of the item, but Councillor Warnes, did you want to say something at the top of this item? Or am I getting confused?
Sorry, I'll come back when you get to item 12. Okay.
We're going to do it now.
Oh, are you? Right.
Yeah, we're going to do it now.
I wasn't
because sorry, the reason for that is that the greening and street care item may need to go into confidence because of the financials. So if you want to, if you two would like to explain why you're extracting yourself from the substantive part of this agenda, and then do your thing, and then we will make sure that you are brought back in if you want to be, but maybe you won't be brought back in. No, maybe you won't.
Right, okay, that's a bit of a curveball. Thank you for that. I am abstracting myself from the meeting as chair of Colchester Commercial Holdings, and that's because on the advice of the monitoring officer, Amphora will have a direct financial interest in the item that is being discussed, and therefore it is advised that I declare my interest and remove myself from the meeting whilst you are discussing matters relating to Amphora. And when it comes to item 12, which is the strategic plan, the advice of the monitoring officer is likewise because it is mentioned in the plan. And then I wanted in the plan to speak on a non-related Amphora issue, and you need to tell me when you'd like me to do that.
So it would now be the right point to do that, and this would then enable you effectively to have an early evening, because you're extracting yourself from those two items, but you've had your say as part of it in a different hat. So it does make sense what we're doing here. I'm going to check with Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was just going to suggest maybe if Councillor Warnes wanted to take place at the Have Your Say table, so it's very clear that he's speaking as a visiting member.
Councillor Moffat, though, you'd like to extract yourself as well, wouldn't you? Do you want to declare why that is?
Similar to Councillor Warnes, actually, so we have a conflict of interest here.
Okay, and because we've just done the work programme item, you two are effectively now free to leave the town hall. But Councillor Warnes, you are now speaking in a different capacity, not as a member of this panel, in a substitute way. So I'll give you the floor to say what you'd like to say. And we are on strategic plan, delivery plan, refresh for clarity.
Thank you, Chair. I had planned to make my notes whilst I was downstairs waiting, so I'm having to do this ad hoc, I'm afraid. Yes, I wanted to speak on the item in the strategic plan about the review of a local plan and the timetabling of that. In doing so, I've taken advice from the Chief Planning Officer due to my role as Chair of the Planning Committee, and therefore I'll be speaking in broad terms and not anything to do with any specific locations, and in doing so, avoiding the dangers of predetermining my position in the future. And yeah, I wanted to warn of the dangers of continued delays in the review of the local plan. I know that some members have asked for delays because they need further information, especially around infrastructure issues, but it may not, hopefully it won't have escaped their notice that there's a recent direction by the appropriate minister in relation to Stockport Council, who have continued to delay the review of their local plan, leading to the minister to actually step in and say that unreasonable delays will not be tolerated, and have directed a timetable towards Stockport, telling them when they have to move to their issues and options stage and giving a date by which that is to be done. So I'm really here to warn members about the dangers of continuing to delay taking a decision on reviewing the local plan, and not least because there is a danger that you lose control in spatial terms of where any additional reviewed allocations will go. And indeed, there is a lesson in Baber Council, I believe, that were unable to defend their 5-year supply and went within a very short period from a well under 5-year supply to over a 10-year supply, but had lost control of where that development went. So I hope that weighs on people's minds when they're thinking about whether they have the information they need, and the dangers of continuing to delay the review of our local plan. And I believe I'm not sure because I'm having to do this ad hoc, I believe there's talk of economic development strategies, and I notice that in the economic development strategy there's no mention of mutuals, and I think that is an actual omission. Whilst I understand the importance of attracting inward investment, I do believe that developing the ability of mutuals in our economy, especially a local one, is an advantageous and important step to take. And examples might be, for instance, you have the e-cargo bike scheme, and you also have shared living on Old Hill Road. And both of those eventually had to set up as, limited companies, because there's a lot of regulation around setting up a cooperative. And I think those are areas where I think a council such as this could actually help, and in doing so, propagate mutuals to be able to trade within the local economy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for putting that on the record, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but you now are able to safely make your way home. So I was thinking about myself and the team. Okay, we have a new member at the table, Councillor Goss. Good to see you. So we are on the strategic plan refresh, and obviously I'm about to hand the floor over to someone else, but we are looking at a document which does not challenge the strategic plan. We can't do that. Scrutiny doesn't have that power. This is something that full council has decided upon, a set of 6 areas of focus, because I don't believe they're listed in hierarchy, and whatever one of us we may think about these areas, they are approved by full council, so we can't really challenge them tonight, even though I would like to understand better the relationship between the top 2, because we've explicitly said that it's important to respond to the climate emergency and think about the water we drink, and yet we're going to be building lots of homes when we are a water distressed part of the country. So that one just stares at me and hurts. But there we go. I won't say anything more than that. Who would like to lead on this one? This is a refresh of a set of things that are happening underneath these categories. That's right, isn't it? Okay. Councillor Pearson, do you want to talk us through what has been removed because it's been achieved, or what has been dropped because you have decided you're dropping something as part of the strategic plan?
Thank you, Chair. So just to repeat what you've just said, Cabinet doesn't have the power to drop anything. It's a council-determined strategic plan, delivery plan. And with that in mind, if you look at paragraph 1.1, it says the report sets out this proposed new, in fact it's not proposed new, it's updated strategic SPDP. As you've highlighted, there are 6 strategic outcomes that Council agreed to back in 2023. The PD goes through to 26, which means that the plan that's in front of us will cease to be relevant during the course of the next municipal year. So interesting times for the council as a whole, but we'll have to come up with a new plan that council approves for the remainder of the life of Colchester City Council. So the areas, the high-end areas that were agreed by Council back in 2023 were respond to the climate emergency that full Council had agreed, deliver homes for those most in need, improve health, well-being and happiness, grow our economy so that everyone benefits. And I take account of the point that Councillor Warren's just made around mutuals. I think that's something that is missing from the document that's in front of us. Deliver modern services for a modern city and celebrate our city heritage and culture. And I just draw members' attention to our website, which has a copy of the latest action plan on the climate emergency. That was agreed last year. And it goes into details about the many different themes and actions around buildings, fleet vehicles, producing renewable energy, enhancing biodiversity and protecting our natural environment, supporting active travel and improving air quality, supporting residents and businesses to reduce, reuse and recycle, working with others to take environmental action, sustainable planning, economy and energy efficient homes, and changing the way we work. So there's quite a bit of detailed work in that won't be seen in the document that's in front of you this evening. So just to conclude my introduction, you'll see in section 9 of the report that the section 151 officer has cast her eyes over the document that's in front of you and is okay with the financial implications and agrees with the recommendations in the report in front of you. I believe that you've been circulated with some of the amendments and changes, and I'll just draw attention to those. So there are some specifics around how the council has been attempting to do some of the things that are in the plan. So reducing our carbon footprint, we've got an additional 2-year capacity to tackle fly tipping across the city. And you'll recall that when I came to you earlier in the year and spoke about the KPIs, that was one that we spent a bit of time looking at. And obviously I will come back later on in the municipal year to indicate to you how that's going. To conserve and enhance our biodiversity, work with communities as grant funders, that's been removed because that's no longer relevant. Ecological surveys for Middlewick are now completed and have been published, so that's been removed as an action. Lead the way with our waste and recycling collection approach. Now, it's only a small thing, but we've introduced the new compactor bins to several places around the city. I know in my own ward of Beerchurch, we got one of the first of those bins a year or so ago, and they have been welcomed because there's no longer an accumulation of waste around what were the small bins that dot the rest of the city. It makes it easier for our waste collection team to collect them. They don't have to collect them as frequently, and they are easier to collect.
These are just, sorry for clarity for folks at home, these are just municipal bins that have a way of compacting waste, so they get collected.
So they get collected less frequently. So increasing the number and quality and types of homes available. We're all aware of the need to increase the supply and quality of a temporary accommodation because of the rise in temporary homelessness around the city over the last couple of years. So that's been included in there. And we've taken out work with partners such as North Essex Councils and North Essex Health and Wellbeing Alliance to implement actions from the North Essex Housing Summit, because that action is now complete.
Sorry to cut across you, but I'm just conscious that we've still got a lot on the agenda. Would it be prudent that we don't go through the items that have been removed as complete? Because we can see that there. I think that's okay.
That's fine.
But it's the ones that are perhaps new and have been dropped for a reason, perhaps.
I'll just pick those up then. So using resources effectively for existing and future tenants. There has been a funding contribution for a decorating hub, which was agreed at the full council budget meeting. That is now in place and is being accessed successfully. The next item on tackling the causes of inequality and support the most vulnerable people in Colchester. We've got delivery of play parks and equipment improvements and upgrades across Colchester. I think most councillors will be aware of developments in their own wards and what's happening there. And finally, investing in our communities with a fund to support asset ownership, growth and community-led services and initiatives to help more self-sufficiency and local empowerment and readiness for local government reorganisation. That's obviously new because LGR is new, or is something that's been introduced since the plan was first agreed by full council.
Chair, can I quickly ask a question?
Can we get through them all and then ask questions? Is that all right? Sorry. Just let's give Councillor Pearson the floor.
Yeah, I'm happy to take questions at this point or comments at this point.
Okay. Well, you'll find I'll do it for you then. You'll support the city centre partnership with wayfinding signage that's new for 2025. That's the last item that I saw there. Everything else had been removed because it had been completed. So let's now open the floor to questions. Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, apologies if I missed this. Cymbeline Meadows being turned into a nature reserve, it's just been removed. Could you explain why that's been removed, or is it a typo?
No, that's been removed because it's no longer possible for the council to take on the responsibility.
What, from a funding perspective or from a legislative perspective?
From a funding perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I'm processing that one. Members, questions? I've got Councillor Willits. Could you just expand on that a little bit? Why is so? Because I don't know these matters, but you're talking about potentially making a nature reserve of Cymbeline Meadows, but we're saying we can't afford to do it, so we're not going to do it. What are the costs involved in that sort of thing? I mean,
We're talking about the cost of the land and then the cost of turning it into a nature reserve.
Because we don't own all of the land.
Because, yeah.
Okay, we own part of it, don't we? Are we not making the part that we own a nature reserve near, probably to the north of the river, near where Charter Woods is, for example? Councillor Goss, help us out here. You know the land better than anyone.
Sorry, was it a?
Sorry,
was
I'm
it
getting
a
into the
manifesto page or something? What was the original driver behind this? I can't remember this being I can't remember this coming up as a discussion. I'm just trying to think what the original driver was in the first place. Did somebody say that they wanted to do it for a particular reason, or I can't? Do we know why this was on the driver in the first place?
Mel, please help us out here.
I'll step in. So it was part of a 5-year plan that kind of extended because of COVID and things. And you're absolutely right. There's already a lot of work that's taken place over at Cymbeline Meadows, and it was something our leader was really keen on. But to conclude that project in terms of funding and resources would have been about £90,000. And because of other priorities at the time, we just didn't have the funding and the resource available. There is a hope that in future years we could use that site in terms of biodiversity net gain, so that developers could use it, do what we wanted to do to get their biodiversity credits, but it wouldn't then be the council funding it. So we had to stop it because we just ran out of funding. So we stopped at the point that we'd achieved quite a lot already.
I know that most of that area is a floodplain. I will come to you, Deputy Chairman. I know that most of that area is a floodplain, but if we are not going to be making that part of it into a nature reserve, is there a risk in the future that a future local authority might say, hey, some nice big apartments could go on that because it's very near the train station? Is there a risk there in us seeking to save the 90 grand?
I agree with you. There is a risk, but we can only do what we can afford to do at this stage.
Okay. Councillor Willits.
Chair, very quickly, just on that. Sorry, Councillor, just checking. Do you mind if I step in on that point?
Yeah, go for it.
Is that okay? Sorry, I'm sorry. Apologies, Councillor Willis. If there's a 5-year plan, have we only how far down the 5-year plan are we, and at what point did we realise that we were going to be 90 grand short on it? I'm just trying to understand a bit more sort of how we got to the decision of, surely we put, was it inflation that did it? I mean, what was it that changed why we weren't going to make this a nature reserve? Can I have a bit more detail, please?
Yeah, so a lot of it was inflation. A lot of it was around we were having to get external support in for the project, and because of the delays, the project costs kept going up. And there was also the issue at the time where the individual leading the project, who was our expert, left. So we would have had to bring in more resource because we just no longer have those skill set within the authority. So that was the 5-year plan had got to the end of that point, but there still wasn't enough funding that had been allocated to the project to enable us to deliver it. So we had already planted lots of trees and other things down at the site, but as I say, it was just a significant chunk of funding at that point that we didn't have the carry forward. So there was funding available for the project, not quite enough. But when obviously discussing end of year finances and things and bringing money forward to deliver, the funding was used for something else that we as an authority needed at that time. So it was agreed that it wasn't going to be allocated to Cymbeline Meadows. It would go to support a more urgent priority at that time. So we've paused it, I think, you know, on the basis that it could be unpaused if funding become available in the future.
So can I have like a recommendation that we do like a lessons learned? Because I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of these things that sort of just, we have ambition and we think we're going to do something and we try to do it over a period of time, and then we get to the end of it and we've spent a lot of taxpayers' money and we haven't delivered what we originally said we were going to deliver. So is that something, can we
hear
that,
from
or?
Councillor Willits first?
Yeah, no.
And can we also just acknowledge that this is a very complicated site, and I think the leader should come and say something about this, because there's multiple land ownerships in question. There's a river running through the middle of it. There's a council-controlled wood, Charter Woods, near the train station. And I know that originally a lot of this stemmed from the desire to plant more trees, and then it was found actually that there's a lot of archaeology there that might not have been suitable for as many trees. But I guess the feeling, and from my point of view, is that if we remove it from here, are we actually pausing it, or are we removing it and then it will be forgotten? And with LGR coming up, because I would hate for it down the line for us to be at risk of someone's coming along and saying, a new local authority coming along and saying, hey, we could have a few 6-storey apartment blocks there because it would be very convenient and make some money. The leader.
Right, thank you. I'll take the last point first. So we took advice on this. You might remember that, so the High Steward, when the land that's not ours, the bridge onwards through that pasture land was put up for sale, there was said to be a risk of purchase. So with every respect to Chris, and I understand the point, it's a debating point, the advice was very, very clear that given the national experience, the Environment Agency, the Planning Authority, that's us at the moment, and every expectation in some new form, that will be us in the future, national policy is not to go and build on a clear risk, a clear floodplain. Now, you can't say nothing will ever happen, can you? But the risk is very, very slight. And it was demonstrated by the fact that it was not sold off for building. You know, we had this within the last year. So let's put it into perspective. This is an area, a pleasant area that's used by walkers and by cows. Simla Meadows was an area which of investment by the council for the better, and Chair, you described it really well, at the back of the woodland project, and that had a lumpy life, didn't it? Half supported, part supported, but we put in some tens of thousands of trees and made improvements. It's what we do where we can. So this had a natural, from my perspective, this had a natural life as a project. Again, the idea of creating a reserve was just a natural step on in terms of protection and status. That's all it was. It was not formally adopted. Again, it was not everybody was a fan, and we've left it at a point where we're in a maturer, better position than it was before. So let's turn it round. What the council did over a number of years in that location as elsewhere was improve our biodiversity in a way that we should take some pride in. But we always have to judge resources and the competing requirements in this place as elsewhere, not least, as touched on earlier, places like Castle Park. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Willits, you've been very patient. I do apologise for cutting across to you.
Quite your privilege, Chairman. I just get confused. I mean, we ask questions. It's our duty to ask questions of the various people who are running the council to try and, so that we as a panel can understand what is going on, and we're sort of the champions, I guess, of the taxpayers to ensure that the council is run well. So earlier on, we asked questions about the climate emergency. We now run into this particular item where the major heading is response to the climate emergency. The subheading is conserve and enhance our biodiversity. The work item was to preserve the community meadow. The proposal, which we're now going to nod through with no comment perhaps, is that it's removed from the programme because the 19k is required on another project which hasn't been explained to us in terms of priority terms. And if anyone drives past this site, you'll now see that it's for sale on the open market. And if you contact the selling agent and say, what can we use this land therefore the answer is inevitably housing. So this shows just how the purposeness of the climate emergency programme, despite the wise words which were said to us earlier on in the evening, we see here is an opportunity which is being lost by a proposal which we see here, all for about £20,000. And I just find it difficult to... 90. Yeah. Find it difficult to really understand and comment as a scrutiny panel on whether these projects are working well or not, because we hear such diverse comments. One person's doing it, another person's just sacrificing it for housing.
Okay, but just to go back, and I'll conclude so we can move on, but the big field in question is not in our gift. That was never discussed as being preserved as a nature reserve. It is other parcels of land near that site. And I'm sorry to say, and to disappoint you if I cause problems here, but I am uncomfortable with allowing that item to be removed as an aspiration. And I'm not saying it has to be done, and I appreciate you're weighing your choices, Leader, with where to spend £90,000. But it's not my role here. In scrutiny, I feel uncomfortable about saying it should be removed. So I don't know how we can institute a paused approach, because otherwise, if we everything else here, by the way, I don't think anyone has any issues with. I think, and it was very helpful on the back of our briefing that we had, that officers were swiftly able to send like-for-like comparison. That was really helpful. We can see that here. But this particular area, Mrs. Bredman, help us out here.
Panel can make a recommendation to Cabinet to not remove this action if that's what you would like to do.
Councillor Smith.
Yes, I think that's a very sensible suggestion, given that we although accept that it is currently delayed, but that we would like to do this when funding becomes available. So we
okay, I move to recommend that we ask Cabinet not to remove this item. Who would like to second that?
Chair, can I just ask that we request Cabinet to investigate how we get ourselves into these situations and how we can avoid over committing on these projects in the future. As I said, I think we have lofty views of what we want to do. I feel like we often get to the situation where there's a number of these projects where we start things and then we spend money on them and we don't quite deliver them. And I think that's important to the taxpayer to understand where that money goes.
So, Councillor Rowe, I think that we've got to think about this holistically, because there are lots of committees in this place, and probably I should have done my homework and looked at the actual site plan in detail, and probably listened back to Environment Panel to see what they're saying about this. And I only have a little bit of context because I know that the Leader was very passionate about planting trees near there. I think we've got a firm recommendation. I think we should, and I'm seeing other hands that are supporting that. So if that looks to be carried, I propose that Cabinet do not remove this. Can I have a seconder? Paul Smith. I'll take Councillor Paul Smith. All those in favour? Thank you.
Chairman, can we not just oppose it? I think we need to have a very clear view as a scrutiny panel why we are opposing it, and we're opposing it because we believe it is part of the climate emergency, or should be part of the climate emergency response of this council to protect the floodplains. And I think we need to state that quite clearly, why we believe this is a matter that should be reconsidered, because while it may be useful to via money to other projects which are more important, this is basic to one of the fundamental issues that the council has chosen to pursue, that is the climate emergency.
Protect the floodplains, conserve and enhance our biodiversity. Doesn't seem unrealistic. Okay, Leader?
I just want to sort of say, we'll look at the recommendations of the panel. That's what we do. We take them seriously. There is something about the scope of this, because we've got two issues conflated. As my recollection of the conversation around improvements to Sinfline Meadows, that was a much, still significant site, but much narrower than the floodplains, which there was a separate conversation around the purchase of, and we decided separately, and I think without much contention, that wasn't an appropriate investment at that time. So I think we need to come back to the panel and give some clarity over the scope of this item, as well as acknowledge the point that's been made. And Chris, if you agree, that's what we'll do.
Okay, I think we need to move forward, if that's okay, folks. We do have a clear recommendation. Thank you for enhancing it, Councillor Willits. Sorry to have done that, but we're here to scrutinise and we have a view. So there we go. Right, apart from that though, is everyone content with the refresh?
Yeah, great.
Okay, then we say congratulations, Councillor Pearson, on your work in refreshing the behind the scenes parts of the strategic plan as valid until 2026. And therefore I conclude that item. And we will now move on to the final item, because we've done the work programme already, haven't we? So we're moving on to, I mean, this is hard to follow, isn't it? Item 11, greening and street care safety fit for the future is where we're going to go next. So I'll give you a few moments to compose yourselves and find the appropriate pages.
Chairman, can I ask for some clarity on what is confidential and what is not confidential in this discussion? I mean, is it only parts of the QPS report which are confidential, or is the whole of the QPS report confidential? How do I tell which bit is confidential, which is?
Okay, so the report came out to you confidentially. It's not as straightforward as saying what is and isn't. I think what we agreed at the briefing was that officers, portfolio holder, will do their best to answer your questions. If they feel it's straying into potentially confidential information that could be about a current contractor or other matters, they'll suggest that they hold that question for private brief. But without knowing exactly what you're going to ask, it's a bit difficult for people to know what would and wouldn't be confidential. It's not straightforward, I think, is the answer.
Okay, we're going to do our best here. Before we begin and welcome a brief presentation on what this item's all about, just for the benefit of viewers at home, we've got two people online. Do you want to just introduce yourselves? I see Gary at the top there. Do you want to introduce who you are, where you're from?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My name is Gary Donoghue. I work for OPS and I was one of the key authors of the report.
Thank you, Gary. That's most helpful. My eyesight's going, so I can't see Mark's surname, but Mark.
Look, Mark's on mute.
Mark, you're on mute. Do you want to just introduce yourself, Mark, when you're off mute? There you go. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark McClintock. I also work for OPS, and I was the other co-author of the report.
Okay, right. Would Ian, Alistair and Simon like to join the table? Councillor Goss needs no introduction. We know who you are. Gentlemen, if that's how you identify this evening, do you want to just introduce yourselves so that folks at home know who you are and why you're here? Starting on my right, please.
Ian Stickley. I'm a project manager in the project management office, and I have been supporting Mel through the development of the option appraisal.
Ian.
Simon Coward, Managing Director of Amphora.
Good evening, Alistair Wilson, Commercial Director of Amphora Trading.
Okay, folks. Right. Let's have an insight into what this is all about. An ongoing long-term project, but one that we have to do. Councillor Goss, are you going to take us away?
I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible, because I'm very simple. So, as you'll be aware, this has been ongoing for some time around the outsourcing to ID Verdi of the grounds maintenance contract, and we as an authority have an aspiration to bring it back in-house. However, in doing so, the market has changed, the climate has changed, and of course we've also got LGR on the horizon. So in March 25, we focused on grounds maintenance with scrutiny recommendation to consider the LATCO option, and therefore the decision required is that we have an in-house direct service delivery model via Amphora, because actually we've had an options paper here before and we didn't necessarily explore that in as greater detail, but we have tonight, and that is what we're going to be scrutinising. So the current ID Verdi contract ends at the end of October 2026, which is not that far away, and not that far away from when this authority may disintegrate. So the future budget will be 1.9 million, and the challenge is to achieve that in the years 2026 to 2027 due to the contract end date coming mid-financial year. But also we'll have to look across the wider service area as well, because that will be transitioning. Reminder that if we re-tendered this, the costs would go up exponentially, and in some respects, by signing the contract, we actually outperformed the market with ID Verdi because of significant inflationary increases due to cost of living. And it's likely that costs would be at least 20% higher. And we had that debate at a previous scrutiny meeting, if I recall. And therefore, the service delivered for £1.9 million would be significantly reduced even from what we've cut now. If you remember, we made the decision to stop cutting highway verges 14 times a year, and we do it 6. And I think that's too low, personally. I think it needs to be higher. Our own grounds, we cut 8 times a year. So, but that's a significant reduction. Essex County Council did increase the amount of money eventually that we got towards verge cutting, because it was costing us as an authority a deficit. It's all taxpayers' money, however you cut the cake, of course. So we are looking to do things differently in terms of tech, working with communities, and also looking at the external contracts or contractual relationship such as highways. And a good example where we actually used technology with ID Verdi was this week on Balkan Hill, because I wanted it cut. And I was told, can't do that, health and safety. And I said, ridiculous, because we've used to cut it, so what's changed? Has it got steeper all of a sudden? So what we actually had is we had an automated robot went out there and it cut the grass. And it's all been done. It looks much, much better. So that is a good example of how we'll take technology in the future and innovate further. You never know, artificial intelligence might even cut grass. So it is a tight time scale with all the challenges, but to move it to the Amphora model, we don't pay the local government pension scheme. They still get a good pension, but it wouldn't be the same cost, which gives us an extra 200k to invest into the service if we brought it into this model proposed. Whilst the terms and conditions are not exactly the same, they're certainly better than ID Verdi. And you may recall that we've had the Unison rep turn up at the town hall before, stating that, you know, we as a council need to ensure ID Verdi pay the living wage, and they do, and it's in the contract, but it's when they pay it into employees' pay packets. That's totally outside of our control. It's all in the contract. We pay what we need to pay, and that should get passed on. So, but you will recall that. So, opportunities also under the new unitary authority that I've mentioned, and of course Braintree and tendering do things slightly different as well, but it's more in-house. It's a more in-house model with some contractors, and it's one of our companies, so it's still in-house. So I think this is the favoured financial model to get the best out of that 1.9 million. And also it would have improved KPIs around quality, assurance, responsiveness, health and safety. And lots of other LATCOs provide this service across the country. It does seem to be a model that's used, which still has the commercial element, but it has that public service ethos, which is exactly the Amphora ethos in those trading companies. So I think that would be absolutely key. And in terms of the specification going forwards, I would look to have the minimum specification that we have now with ID Verdi, but then to improve that in terms of the quality of cut or frequency of cut. Because if you've got more in-house capability and you haven't in effect got the same profit margin across that, you can achieve more. I think people will feel more proud to work for the organisation because it is directly employed rather than through a third-party contractor as well. And I do think that that will improve things around sickness and quality of work as well, because there are some issues where there might be a bag on the verge and the guy on the mower drives round it rather than moving the one bag. It's just one example of where we've picked up Ivy Verdi, and I would not expect that from our own almost direct employees. You know, a little bit of extra effort to pick up a bag because it's Colchester, and in effect they work for Colchester. So I'll leave it there, but welcome any questions. You've got all the papers, so you should have read them, should have done your work, and we're here to try and bring it to life if needed.
Thank you, Councillor Goss. I see Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Yes, from looking at the papers, and it's quite clear, I have no doubt that the Amphora solution is financially the one that makes the most sense. I think it's telling that the size of the pension contribution is a key factor in driving that decision. I think it's good that we'll maintain more flexibility with the direct deployment, because if you're working with a big contractor, they're going to want to specify everything, and every time you change something, there will be a cost. I think, though, we will need to be very clear. First of all, I'd like to say I also was very taken by what Unison said. I think their advice on equipment would be very helpful. I'm not sure if Councillor Willits can remember when we were doing something on the waste and we had some crew turn up and suggested that the machines we were buying just were not up to standard, and they turned out to be absolutely right, and we had to write them off in a very few years. So I think using the staff's expertise on what's good equipment, what isn't, what they really need, would be absolutely fantastic. But I think the real trouble is we're confining everything within a cost envelope. Now that means that at some point there will be a pressure on that cost envelope, and if we're not going to be increasing the cost, then we're going to have to be cutting the service, and we're going to be very clear as to what services we have to cut. So whether it is cutting the grass verges or the play areas or whatever it is, I think that needs to be very clear, because that's going to be a tough decision. And if you're making those cuts in my ward, I'm going to be on to you, and I think every other councillor around the table will be doing exactly the same thing. Can I also ask a question? There's currently a split on the grounds maintenance between CBH and Colchester City Council. How does that fit in with the 1.9 envelope?
So that's included. We work really closely with CBH, so their tenants pay for the service they receive. It's recharged, but obviously there are some opportunities around some of those non-direct costs. So CBH would pay a share via the HRA of the back office support in terms of HR, finance, legal, that kind of thing. And what we're going to try and do, because at the moment it is a two-tier system, because tenants pay for the work, they have an enhanced service to some of the other parts of the city. And what we're trying to, because actually that's really quite difficult from a operational aspect. You've got someone doing it 8 times over here and 6 times over here. So we're looking to try and harmonise the service being delivered as part of that process through consultation with residents, so that it's a simpler service to deliver. You're looking confused, apologies.
I am, yes, because CBH tenants pay for the service that's provided. If they have their service reduced by 25%, then their costs will go down by 25%, whatever. We'll ignore overheads for the time being. That won't help our budget, because you've reduced your expenditure, but you've also reduced your income coming in from the tenants. So I'm not quite sure how that's working. That's where my confusion was coming from.
Apologies. So the CBH element of the contract doesn't affect CCC budgets, But so at the moment, obviously they pay for a split of what they get from ID Verdi. But by looking at doing things differently and making the operation more efficient, yes, that might mean a reduction to CBH tenants for what they pay, but that might increase capacity in terms of what we're delivering, because they won't be going to the same site 3 different times in a week to do different things. They'll be able to have a zonal based approach where actually they do what's required whilst they're in that zone. So it's more about operational efficiency in terms of what's being delivered to get more bang for your buck, as it were, in terms of, whereas at the moment there's so many different schedules that they're trying to operate to, it really just isn't the most efficient way of working. So I guess it's that thing of actually everybody benefits by doing it in a different way.
Okay, Councillor Rippingale.
Thank you. Personally, I'm really interested in this, the community side of it. At the moment, it's quite complicated for small community groups to ask for council land and the cost involved in transferring it. Obviously, the less land that we're having to maintain, the less cost to us, which possibly one of the mains we can do the cost save. So with Amphora being slightly more commercial, how are we going to ensure that we maintain a good ability for communities, let's say communities, not even community groups, to take over some of their spaces? I know we have a similar issue in Newtown and Old Heath, where we have a bowling green that's been locked off for years. And every time we say, can you just open the gate for someone to be able to use it, we get told no. You know, for us, for me, it's trying to understand what the governance would be around that, how we make it more accessible for those communities to unlock those spaces for whatever type of project, as long as it's, you know, appropriate, and how they'll be supported with the governance going forward.
That's a really key point. You know, a big part of this project and the wider Fit for the Future stuff is around exactly what you're describing, the community stuff. And my response to that would be, rather than that individual coming to us saying, can you unlock the gate? The response is probably no, we haven't got the resource. But actually the response should be, what can we do to help you unlock the gate? Because actually we do have a gentleman whose name I've forgotten, he's 80 something. And he unlocks one of our play parks every single day, and he locks it up again because there were issues of antisocial behaviour. So he came forward and said, look, I'm happy to unlock it and lock it so that the antisocial behaviour doesn't happen late at night and things. And in terms of the asset transfer, we are as an organisation trying to hone down the policy, because we are getting lots of requests for asset transfer. And as I think Councillor Pearson alluded to earlier, we have got the Play Park project. You know, that's one example of where we're trying to upgrade our play parks so that essentially we could transfer them to parish councils, and then actually they would then maintain them going forward, which reduces the burden on the local authority and gives it local ownership. You know, we would work with Amphora on those projects. And essentially, you know, there will be things built in that we have built in currently with IT30, where, you know, if suddenly we were saying, actually, there's 10 sites we no longer need you to maintain because they've transferred to community asset, we can vary the contract to say, actually, we'll reduce that from the contract, or it could give flexibility for Amphora to do more elsewhere. So community asset transfer and, you know, support from communities with things like gates, you're absolutely right, is a key part of this going forward. And I don't see any blockages with it going to Amphora to still be able to deliver that.
I think we do need to have a look at that policy, because that is definitely not the impression that I got about supporting those groups from certain officers. So I think it's very well us saying that, but we need to make sure that it's actually being implemented in practice, because there are spaces that are sitting probably in more urban areas, there are some in rural areas, but could be utilised more effectively, but the process for the ordinary board is too complicated. So, and they will need support from officers. And coming back in terms of communication times, you know, you don't want to lose that enthusiasm from the community because they're stuck in bureaucracy. So, yeah, that's just one.
I think we need to differentiate also between community groups and parish councils, because, for instance, we're transferring something to 8 Ash Green, which was the bike track that became slightly controversial when it was transferred to CCC, and we've managed to strike a deal to move that to 8 Ash Green. That's relatively straightforward because it's a governing body ultimately. You know, it might be a very small governing body, but it's an important governing body. The issue you've got, of course, is unparished areas, and there may be a conversation at the next council meeting about that in a motion. But the community group aspect, I agree. So the community allotment, for instance, the first one in Colchester, which is Drury Road, that's now been held up because we might have to go to the Secretary of State to get approval, which just seems utterly bonkers, but it is because it's the first one. It's proving that process. The issue with community groups is, like parish councils, once we've got rid of it, there's no going back. So once it's transferred, it's done in perpetuity. And that would be the same for community groups, which means they have to be able to sustain in a mature fashion both the resource and the funding in the same way a parish council could to a degree. So therefore, each case would have to be. But if it's not in the long-term interests of Colchester, then we shouldn't do it. If the community group doesn't really have the funding, I'm thinking of a cafe, for instance, that, you know, might have come back in for re-tendering quicker than expected. So, you know, that's an example of where something might not always go as well as it could. So that we just got to be a bit careful, a bit cautious on it.
Okay. Yep, go on.
Believe me, I completely understand about the governance on that particular site, but I do think that that's where we need to maybe look at some of our partners, you know, people who have been in front of scrutiny, to be able to help us manage that infrastructure for those smaller groups. So, and maybe look at more umbrella organisations to support those smaller groups.
And I agree. And, you know, say a couple of years ago, you would have used Community 360 as a good example. And then, of course, things have changed slightly. It's downsized, it's changed its focus. So although you might go with, say, another organisation, things can change. Even with bigger, maturer, trusted organisations, things can go wrong with their own governance. So it's a complex situation. Parish councils are much easier. The idea is let's parish all of Colchester and then pass it all to parish councils. There you go.
Evolution. Right. Okay, I see Councillor Willits, but before that, I just think maybe, since as folks you've had the courtesy to listen to a lot, Simon, perhaps do you want to just give us a little flavour of how exciting an opportunity this is for you? Do you relish this opportunity, or are you fearful that it's been thrust on you? What's your take on all of this?
So from an Amphora perspective, we're really excited. So I think it will bring breadth to the business that we're running. I think there's a real fit in terms of events is around place shaping. This is around place maintenance. And so again, it brings together the work we do in Castle Park, in open spaces. So there's a real synergy here. I think in terms of the opportunity for us to be supported and really under that control of the council in providing that service, we can be really close, and any investment is returned into the assets and into the council. So it's almost the closest you can get in terms of providing a commercial approach. I do pick up the points that Amphora does have a real community focus. So although we're commercially driven, you know, the underbelly of us is around that service, as the leader spoke about earlier. So for us, there's a fit. We have internal expertise. I've got previous background in doing this, but we would want to pick up Councillor Smith's point, utilise the strengths of the ID Verdi team. So absolutely to build on what they do, but working closely with the council to get the right spec and deliver the right service. So for us, great opportunity. We're keen to get started.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Willits.
Thank you, Chairman. My questions are in random order because I just picked them up as I was reading through the document. The first one I came to was on the recommended decision 2.1, negotiate with Amphora to transfer the GM service to them. This seemed particularly vague to me in terms of an action, yes, in terms of a sort of manifesto, fine, bung it over to Amphora. But I would have preferred to have seen some specification of the work that is being given to Amphora. I think we as a scrutiny panel have a responsibility to see that there is value for money pertaining to all our expenditure, and the way this contract seems to be in the process of being transferred is going to make it quite obscure. We don't quite know what Amphora are being asked to do. We don't know how they're going to do it. We don't know what the value, or it'll be very difficult to calculate the value for money performance figures where there's no specification. We're not sure what the obligation is. One almost gets the feel that this is being moved to Amphora because they are under the sort of the TCAL tax arrangements. They're thought of as an operating division within the council, and therefore we can just turn the money on or off, and Amphora will have to sort of dance the tune when times get hard, whereas if this was an external contract and we turn the money off, we just get sued in the court for breach of contract. So yeah, there is this residual doubt in my mind, Chairman, about how we are going to carry out some of our functions like value for money when we're not quite sure what the specification is. It's going to be a moving target. Amphora will be asked to do different things in different years. We'll be playing ever catch up to find out what is happening and how this is being reflected in the budget. So I see a real issue there. And it's brought up certainly in the risk analysis on page 63, where there's going to be one of the major issues will be a blurred oversight of how performance monitoring is carried out when there is no hard specification of what is asked to do. I mean, it may work, Chairman, it may work, and it may be a good idea in principle, but I just don't understand how the rigours of sort of financial accounting and value for money is going to be implemented. Then we come to the issue which we were just talking about, the plan, it's paragraph 7.4, the plan to offload responsibility to local groups and councils. Now, in regard to where the title is moving, such as the wood that Councillor Goss mentioned and the bowling green, which was mentioned by Councillor Rippendale, where the title moves, you can see how the responsibility for grounds maintenance is going to move. Now, if there is going to be a considerable amount of this, moving the title out and therefore reducing the specification because there's going to be less land to maintain, if this becomes a significant feature, it needs to be wound into the financial analysis. And the figures that we've been presented, although they're only 2 years going forward, they contain no reference to reductions because of 8 ash green latch wood is no longer, iron latch wood is no longer going to be maintained by Amphora. So I would have expected to have seen sort of some matching reduction in the budgetary requirement as a result of that. More interestingly, though, Chairman, are going to be those areas where the title remains with the council, but the local community will see what is described elsewhere as a visible reduction. They talk about non-visible and visible reductions in what is being done. and there will be visible reductions in the services being provided. And there is certainly no estimate for the reduction in services in the financial material that we have. And I would have thought even at this stage we should be able to say, yes, we see in the appropriate financial analysis on page 44 of how much has been spent this year and next year, but someone surely should have given some thought to what is going to happen in terms of title transfer and the pressures that will come about for persuading parish councils perhaps to do things which in the past have been within the GM budget on land in their village because they just want it to look nice, and it's no longer looking nice because the volume has been turned down on finance and the work is not being done. In the good old days, of course, there was a parish grant where if a parish council or a community council or the town council at Wivenhoe carried out work which would otherwise have been done on ground maintenance and they carry it out, then they were entitled to a percentage of the cost of doing that. Now, I don't know whether that is envisaged as part of these new working arrangements or whether we will just expect the town councils and the community councils to bite the bullet on their own finances if they decide their place looks such a mess because the finance has been withdrawn, Amphora are no longer doing the work. A couple of passing issues, Chairman, which I think are probably don't pertain to the fundamentals of this item, but which at some stage the panel should get a better understanding, and that is why there are so significant differences in the pension arrangements between Amphora and the council. It did seem a huge amount, and as Councillor Smith said, the benefits of going to Amphora are mainly based on the fact that we're not going to pay Amphora people the same sort of pension contributions as we do for our own employees. So we're sort of predicting a whole change to the way we do things on the difference in pension arrangements between effectively council departments. Now, I'm not sure whether that's relevant for this evening, but I think it's relevant to look at as a work item for the panel. As is the question mentioned elsewhere of when Amphora makes a profit and has to pay corporation tax, and the extent to which that can be mitigated by using the capital allowances that are available to enhance the equipment that's available to the GM service. But it does beg the question, as under the TECL rules, Amphora is treated no different from a department of the council, why we should be asking Amphora to make a profit, and we should not just be reducing Amphora's rates so that they break even and we all benefit. Those were the first issues which came to mind when I read this report, so perhaps I should stop at that point, Chairman, and look for some answers.
Councillor Goss, there's quite a lot to go on there. Do you want to try your best?
Well, it would help if you were actually a bit more succinct, because there's just a lot of verbiage and a lot of commentary and conflation, and we'll try and pick out the questions if we can. I think Mel's noted them down, so I think between us we'll try and work. So one of the things I talked about earlier was, I don't see that I think the benchmark is we have a minimum specification already set with ID Verdi. That is the benchmark to start from in terms of a negotiation. So it's not like we don't have a specification. We have something that we have drafted. It's in the contract and it has a minimum set of cuts, and there is a specification about the quality of that work. So that is where I would expect us to start from, because it's not like we're starting from nothing. It's not like we haven't cut the grass for the last number of decades. So that's the first thing. And then, as it also says in the paper, there will be KPIs, clear key performance indicators, that we manage Amphora on in the same way that, in effect, we do manage ID Verdi. But we need to make sure those KPIs are really clear, and therefore, in the same way you'd write objectives or KPIs as we do now, we do that in the same way. In terms of land transfer, I've got some quite strong views on this. 8 Ash Green is a really strong example of how you do it well, because it hasn't actually cost Colchester anything, because it's come in and we've transferred it out, or it's transferring out, and it's covered by Section 106 funding, which we would have used. So that just goes it's not, the 106 funding is not going to 8 Ash Green, but they have full access to it. It remains with us, but they have full access, and that's all covered by legal agreements. As I referred earlier, we have to be really careful who we transfer land to. So if Mrs. Miggins comes along and wants to take a massive great playing field, you probably wouldn't transfer it to Mrs. Miggins, because she may not have the capital or the capability to actually maintain it or keep it open or keep it safe. The other thing, of course, that could happen is Mrs. Miggins, if we did transfer it, could still use our services to maintain it, so that there is continuity, and then in effect we get income from Mrs. Miggins. So there are different models that you can look at in terms of transfer, but we have to be, and you'll like this word, Dennis, we have to be really conservative in how we deal with that, and the policy needs to reflect that. We've talked about town councils. Well, no, there is no parish grant. There hasn't been parish grants for years, and there aren't going to be now. That's not going to change. If a town or parish council takes a piece of land, then it will be up to them to business case how they're going to maintain it and what the costs would be. And no doubt it probably would go on the precept in the same way that parish councils or Mersey Town Council deals with it now. Pension arrangements, I'm afraid I have a really good pensions advisor, so I'm afraid I leave my pension to his expertise. But in more simplistic terms, I'm sure you'll understand, Dennis, if we pay less into a pension, the local government pension is expensive. It is expensive. It's one of the most gold-plated pensions around. And Amphora is not set up, but Amphora still pays a competitive pension. It just doesn't cost as much as the public sector one. And therefore, it costs less. Simple as that. Simple as that. And the corporation tax and etc. Well, I'm not a tax expert. Again, I pay experts to do my tax affairs, so I can't answer that, I'm afraid. But I hope that's answered your questions, whatever they were.
Can I just clarify then, Chairman, that the cutting, for instance, that the cutting regime shown on page 46 will become an obligation for Amphora. Not only will it become an obligation for Amphora, it will become an expectation on the part of all citizens in the borough that they will expect to see Amphora cutting their grass and open spaces in the same way as the expectation was. I'm not sure whether they fulfilled it. ID Verdi.
Page 46 of the OPS report, Councillor Willis is referring to, where it does specify.
There's been lots of words tonight in this room, so let's cut to some I said earlier. I said we cut verges 6 times a year. We reduced it from 14, and I said that we currently cut our own land 8 times a year. I would not expect us to cut it any less than that, because frankly, I don't think that's enough. So the minimum would be what we do now, but I would expect us to negotiate hard and try and push that up if we can, because I think it's too infrequent personally. So just to set the expectation, I plan would be to push it up, even if it's a slight notch, that it's 8 and 8.
Let me help you out here, Councillor Goss. Let me help you out here, but also because there's a word you're missing in all of this, which is a flexibility. But anyway, I just observed that. Councillor Willits, do you wish to pursue?
No.
Members, Councillor Smith, you look like you're poised with the buzzer.
Sorry, yes. I'm struggling a little bit because currently we pay 2.4 million. We think that these nice people from Amphora can provide exactly the same service. Well, I'm being modest and saying they're just exactly the same service for an awful lot less. I don't think that's a realistic proposal, given that there will be increases in costs due to inflation and what have you, which we're not allowing for in the budget, which is staying at £1.9 million for the next 2 years. I thought it was saying we're going to be looking at the service that they provide within the cost envelope of 1.9 million and get as much as we can based on where we have the current levels. But clearly at some point there will have to be some reductions if the money runs out.
So 9 million is the budget envelope to reduce the budget on what it would be for 26-27, but then that will be subject to GM87 in future years, so it won't continually reduce, but we're taking the funding off at the front end. I think what I wanted to say was that absolutely, in terms of the service specification, we will. It won't necessarily be reducing the service. It will be in the way we deliver the service. There's quite a lot of inefficiency in how the service is delivered, but actually we want an outcome-based contract. So Councillor Willits is absolutely right. This isn't like for like, so we won't be able to do a comparison with how did Ivy Verde do it, how did Amphora do it, because you won't be comparing apples with apples. There will be changes to what's delivered. And I've completely, sorry, it's been a long day. I've had something really important to say and it's gone completely out of my head. But it was so outcome focused. So actually we've had scenarios in previous years where we've had current contractor members of staff going out and cutting dust because the spec says it has to be cut this amount of times per year. So we're going to fulfil that and we're going to cut the dust. You know, we've had complaints from residents. We won't get that with Amphora. They'll have individuals who are responsible for areas who will say, actually, that doesn't need cutting, it's dust, we've had a dry year. Or actually, that area needs more cutting because of the rain, and we'll have the flexibility. So whilst absolutely we wouldn't expect levels to significantly drop, we expect that flexibility and agility to say, what do we want the city to look like, rather than how many times do we cut that piece of grass this month. But what we do know is to achieve the Fit for Future reductions, if we went back out to contracts and if we bought it in-house, because of the pension scheme and because of profits, if it went back out, what you would get for that 1.9 million, you would see quite dramatic differences in our parks and countryside and open spaces, because there would be less of that budget available to spend on service delivery and more going on the pension scheme or on profits if it was going back out.
Chair, I think we're getting close to the point we may need to go into private session, because I'd like to test whether...
Okay, let's do that. I do want us to be departing from this building not long after 9 p.m. tonight. It's only right on officers who've done a long day, and it's been a busy evening, but happy to do that if that's the feeling in the room. Would we like to go into private?
Yeah.
Do we need to go into private at this point?
I would like to understand exactly how we're going to see these cost reductions, and I think that will incur some conversation about...
Well, I assume it will infer conversations about the pensions.
No, because that's not the system they're in at the moment.
Let's go to private for 10 minutes, and we can no hold bars it. It's the right way to do it. Okay, do I get a second to go into private? Well, you've made a recommendation, I'll support that. So let's go into private. Okay. Who would like to go into private? Thank you very much. I need to read a set of words which I don't have in front of me, but I'll get them. Here we go. Sorry, folks at home, but in accordance with section 100A brackets for the Local Government Act 1972, in accordance with the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Access to Information, England Regulations 2000, as amended to exclude the public, including information, England Regulations 2000 as amended to exclude the public, including the press, from the meeting, so that any items containing exempt information, for example, confidential, personal, financial or legal advice in Part B of this agenda, printed on yellow paper, can be decided. Exempt information is defined in section 1001 and schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Thanks very much for watching at home.